All right, today we're jumping into a really complex and, I've got to say, pretty intense framework from an article by Kandayia. We're going to be exploring this concept called spiritual trauma imprinting. It's this idea that for some people, everyday life can actually be weaponized against them. It is a heavy topic for sure, so let's break down what the author really means by that. This quote from the author really sets the stage, doesn't it? It gets right to the core of what we're about to unpack. This idea of a hidden conditioning that, according to this framework, happens right under our noses, using things we see and touch and interact with every single day. Okay, so a quick but really important note before we go any further. The author starts this work with a trigger warning, and it's important we do the same. This explainer is going to touch on some really distressing themes, things like abuse and manipulation. We're presenting this for awareness, so please engage with care and feel free to take a break if you need to. So what exactly is this hidden form of trauma? Let's dive in and really define the central concept that's at the heart of this entire framework. The term the author comes up with is spiritual CPTSD imprinting. Now, you might already be familiar with CPTSD, complex PTSD, which usually comes from long-term repeated abuse. But this framework, it adds a whole spiritual layer to it. It suggests that everyday things like food, money, even relationships can be used as conduits to anchor that trauma into a person's life. It's a heavy idea, so let's look at the specific tools the author says are used. So the author outlines 6 specific, everyday conduits that are supposedly used for this imprinting. Let's walk through what they are and how they're said to work in this context. First up, we have food and drink. Now, according to the author, food can be used to energetically bind someone. We're not talking about poison here, but about intention. Think about a meal cooked with deep resentment. The impact, as described, is linking trauma to the very act of nourishment. And in a similar way, drinks like tea or alcohol can supposedly be used to weaken a person's will, making them more open to this kind of imprinting. Next, the framework gets into bodily fluids and clothing. The author suggests that in abusive situations, things like sexual fluids, blood, or even saliva can be used to create these energetic seals or trauma loops. And clothing, it's framed as a kind of second skin that can be manipulated. This could be by gifting items that have energetic attachments or by reusing clothes from a traumatic event to keep that negative imprint active. The last 2 conduits are maybe the most complex: money and close relationships. In this view, money isn't just about financial control, it's about energetic control. It's used to create what the author calls soul-binding obligations. The framework also suggests that those cycles of love bombing and betrayal with people you love, or even using friends who don't know what's happening, well, that can bypass all of our natural defenses because the source is so familiar and trusted. So those are the 6 conduits. But how do they all supposedly work together to create these deep imprints? Well, the author lays out a pretty specific process for how it's done. It's broken down into 4 steps. First, some kind of event happens that creates vulnerability. It opens up the energy field. Second, a specific moment of high emotion or trauma is targeted. Third, this is where these unspoken energetic contracts are said to be embedded. And finally, step 4, fear or shame, gets anchored to a totally normal, everyday action or item, and that's what creates the persistent trigger. Okay, so after outlining this really dark framework, the author thankfully shifts focus to solutions. How does someone working within this belief system begin to break these imprints and start to reclaim their own energetic space?
And that's the key question, isn't it? If these energetic tethers are a real thing, how in the world do you undo them? The source material gives us a few distinct methods to look at.
The very first tool offered is something called a reversal declaration. This is basically an act of taking your power back with your own voice. The idea is that by speaking a declaration, just like this one, over an item, you are consciously revoking any unseen consent and breaking that energetic tie. The second method described is spiritual cleansing by element, which is a much more ritualistic approach. According to the author, fire can be used for transmutation, like burning old letters. Water is for purification. Smoke, from cleansing herbs like sage, is used to clear energy. And even sound, from bells or chimes, is used to physically break up those stagnant imprints. The author also brings up other tools like prayer scripts and protection sigils. But what's absolutely crucial to highlight here, and the source is very, very clear about this, is that this information is for awareness and education. It is not a substitute for professional therapy, legal help, or medical care. The whole goal is just to give a name to experiences that some people might find really, really hard to articulate. And that brings us to our final slide, and really the core question. After exploring a framework that's this heavy and this complex, the author leaves us with this. Whether you see these concepts as literal or maybe more metaphorical, the underlying theme here is about recognizing the subtle ways our peace can be disrupted, and more importantly, how we can consciously start to reclaim it. What does that look like for you? It's a powerful question to really sit with.